A word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling choicey adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week we have read through chapter 59. So we read chapters 50 through 59 this week. And folks, it gets fucking heavy.
Hey there, this is Cross.
And I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. Think of us as your drunk weekly book club.
Now, Crossland, do you want to know what I think of your selection for this weekly book club?
Yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear what you... Oh.
Yeah, this week is pretty tough. I get kind of heated about a lot of the things that you have written down in the notes. I kind of went off a little bit in writing my notes, so I'm excited to get into it. But yeah, there's some discussions to be had.
There's some definitely clear feelings that are going to be talked about. So in case you haven't caught on, today is our 8th episode covering Morningstar by Pierce Brown, and we're here to discuss the first half of Part 4, Stars, covering chapters 50 through 59. Before we get into that hellhole, let's talk about what we're drinking. PJ, what are you having?
I have to giggle about it a little bit because otherwise I can't keep a straight face while I say it. So... there is a podcast that I listen to called Matt and Mattingly's Ice Cream Social, and they came up with a cocktail in one of the recent episodes called a Dr. Manhattan. It is Manhattan with hypnotic instead of sweet vermouth. And they were trying to grapple with how to get the color right with the whiskey, so it's with moonshine instead.
Which is just a completely new cocktail.
Yeah, it's as they stated it, it's fucking terrible.
Oh,
so it's horrible. So I had to edit it a little bit and refine it a little bit. And it is not a Manhattan anymore. But the name's cool. And it's got a cool blue color like Dr. Manhattan. So it's 1.5 ounces of moonshine, 1.5 ounces of hypnotic, 4 dashes of orange bitters. And then I found that to be not quite sweet enough to cover up all the fucking moonshine. So I put a couple little drops of simple syrup in there to kind of sweeten it up a little bit. And then in the picture that I'll post, there's a big ice cube in my glass, and that's mostly just for preservation. So
self-preservation?
Warm cocktail. Well, I mean, because we make the cocktails and then we go over our notes. We should change that. We really should. We've talked about this quite a bit.
I generally leave mine in the fridge because I take a lot of time now to take the photo and do a lot of setup. So yeah. I generally take the photo and then put it back in the fridge and then get it out.
I still think if we just had a 5-minute break between when we go over the notes and when we start recording, we could have a really good cocktail when we actually start recording. Not that it's bad most of the time, but
probably true. Fair.
And then we're not tempted to drink it beforehand.
That's true for you because I drink water before we start the show.
Well, you talk more during the notes.
Fuck you. Agreed.
Well, this is just how it works. You wrote the notes.
So
you're describing them to me.
True. What are you followed up with?
I've got a triple IPA from Black Stack called Triple Stacks.
Nice.
I think it was supposed to be their 3rd anniversary beer, but
COVID?
Yeah, so it was supposed to be but COVID. So their 4th anniversary was March 13th.
That's pretty funny.
So I think this came out right before that.
Interesting. Sounds like a good
Anyway, that's what I've got. What about you?
I am having a bourbon Ricky, which is really simple. It treads the line between a bourbon sour and otherwise a number of those drinks. I was basically looking for something that was an interesting spin on something that I'd tried, but not quite the same. So bourbon Ricky is 2 ounces of bourbon of your choice, a half a lime in a highball, and then you just top the highball with sparkling water. So
half a lime as in half the juice of one lime?
So you juice the lime,
Or
juice the half the lime, and then you actually just stick the lime in the highball.
do you muddle it at all, or is it just kind of in there?
No, it's just kind of in there. So it just kind of like infuses a little bit of the stuff, but you don't really like try to break it up or chunk it out at all.
All right. So it's like a not sweet whiskey sour.
Yes. Yeah, there's absolutely no sweetener here. It's just really good. It actually like just brings out the flavor of the bourbon more or less. And
that sounds really refreshing.
It is. That is definitely the win. Honestly, you could like put mint or basil in this just to like make it something else, and it would be solid. It doesn't need any sweetening or anything like that. But you could totally make it herbaceous fairly easily if you wanted to modify it and make it more interesting.
I feel like you could twist it up with some different flavored LaCroix too.
Yeah, so I actually kind of doubled down. I had a lime bubbly open, and so I just use that.
Gotcha.
So it's extra lime, but yeah, depending on how much lime you actually have, how much lime juice and whatnot. Technically, it's supposed to be even amount. Which out of the size of lime I had, it was about 2 ounces of lime juice. So
okay, perfect.
Big ol'.
Wait, that's a fucking huge lime. If that's half of one lime.
Yeah, dude.
What?
It looked more like an orange. I actually took a photo because it was big.
Like, I feel like it's usually 1.5 ounces per lime.
Yes, this was closer to like a small orange, but it was a lime.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right. It's super good though. It's super good flavor. Did not fit in the highball
found
easily.
a new fruit and decided, oh, this is green. It must be a lime. When in reality, he's got like mutant fruit.
It was a kiwi hybrid with a lime. That's why it was a little fuzzy.
Oh God.
Just kidding. I'm following that up with Evergreen Brewing's pet insurance. It's a combination between them and Non Sequitur Beer Company, and it is
I like that
fucking
name.
delicious. It's a double IPA, and it is super good. But Pet Insurance is the beer from Evergreen and Non Sequitur.
I like all three of those names there, both brewery names and the name of the beer. I applaud.
Yeah, it's super good. Very,
it sounds good.
all around. Like the beer's really good. The companies are very good. Yeah, I just need comment no further.
There you go.
All right. Well, we have a shit ton of stuff to talk about today. Mostly sad stuff.
I feel like that's every fucking week.
It's been the last 3 weeks.
It has been dense, man.
As we roll downhill towards the end.
Oh God.
Okay. Fuck. Okay, so with that, we're going to move into last week's predictions. And before we go anywhere with that, we have the Deadpool, which we only have one character that was on the Deadpool today showing up, which means that, for the record, next week's episode is going to have a fuck ton of payoffs. So I don't know. I didn't think about that. I don't know. We might not have drinks.
Wrote this.
Yeah. We might have to just sprinkle the Deadpool throughout and take the shots whenever, that might make the end of the episode
I figured that's how we would do it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So Deadpool for today, though, is Severo, of whom you said would die, and that it would be on a poor decision of Darrow's.
I said that as well.
So fucking on the nose. So, cheers. Take my little shot.
There you go. Here, I'll have a little sippy poo with you, but mine's not a shot.
All right. So Deadpool over. We move into the predictions you made, and we have quite a few that kind of come to fruition this week. We're getting a lot of questions answered that were kind of in the backlog. So one that's been sticking with us since literally the first episode of this book is, who is Ephraim? And you said...
I said that it was an orange that Trig and Holiday knew from the Sons of Ares Earth faction.
Which is wrong.
I would like to argue that it's not mostly wrong.
So, okay, fine.
He's a gray.
Mm-hmm. That Trig and Holiday know from Earth.
That Trig and Holiday from Earth.
Who joins the Sons of Ares.
Part of the Sons of Ares.
After Trig dies. Your timeline's a little off.
All right, I'm fucking wrong. Okay.
Yeah, you're taking the drink for that one. So
there we go.
The next one is what has Darrow wittingly unleashed? And you said
that he gained one hell of an army that he can't control in the slightest. The same enemy with a different army.
And I think you're mostly right, so I'm going to take the drink
here. I think
here.
so, except for the part where Darrow's the enemy. Well, not Darrow, but
Gold. Just
all of the golds that are also a part of the Sons of Ares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's just a brief moment.
It's a flicker in the light of the life of the Obsidians. You know, it's a brief moment of rebellion. Gets squashed quickly. Oh, rip Uncle Neril. Holy shit. Wait a second. Was he in the Deadpool?
Oh.
Why the fuck didn't I put that one there? All right, double checking here. Did we make a prediction on Neril? Did we?
Talk
we
about
didn't.
Neril?
Holy shit. I overlooked Neril.
I dodged a bullet on that one.
You probably did.
I would have said that because he was already considered dead.
Oh, yeah. Good point. That is why we skipped him.
Yeah. He was already dead.
Well, he was,
in the eyes of,
thought dead.
We were told he was dead.
Yep. Fair. Okay, that's why we didn't predict him. Shit.
Which means I would have guessed that he'd be dead. Which I think means I'm right.
Yes, I guess we'll take that, but I'm not taking the shot for that one.
Damn it.
All right, so
okay.
Prediction, where are we going next?
That's where I was going with it. I said Tinos, which did not happen.
Factually wrong. Yep. Drink, motherfucker.
Cheers.
We have a lot of drinking in this episode to look forward to because everyone else drinks a lot. Okay. What is happening with Cassius was one of the questions, and you said
Darrow is really going to wish that he hadn't kept Cassius alive.
Oh, man.
I feel like I hit that one on the head.
Do you feel vindicated? Yeah,
but also, like, I was screaming at Darrow the entire time during this read that this was a bad fucking idea. Like, when I talked about having some feelings at the beginning of this, these are those feelings that I was talking about. I was so upset that Darrow kept going through with these shitty decisions to trust Cassius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a bad call, dude. All right, taking my drink. Oh, so limey. Okay. All right. Where does Antonia go is another question.
I said to suckle on the teat of Mama Octavia, which there was no suckling. No suckling was had.
But kind of went back to Mom, but I think that there's a midpoint there where she gets beaten the shit out of by Victra, and so I think she does go back to Octavia. She does make it back, yes, but so we're both gonna drink.
The spirit's not there. Yeah,
I think it's fair to split the question. We both drink. Post cheers, I guess.
Yes.
So with that, we still have on deck, we've got 5 questions that remain that will be answered in some form next week, being we'll either address them in some way or what have you. But yeah, there's a lot. So with that, we got to get into the chapters here.
Will this one get answered?
The red or gold spermies? What do you think, PJ?
I think it'll get answered.
55 pages? You think that's going to get answered?
Yeah.
51 pages, sorry.
I think that'll take up at least 15.
Explaining. Okay. Anyway, with that, let's get into the chapters. So we've got our breakdown, chapter 50. Before we get into that, I just wanted to read the beginning of part 4 here, which is a quote from Io. So, my son, remember the chains. When gold ruled with iron reigns, we roared and twisted and screamed for hours of veil of better dreams. That's from Io of Lycos. And it's a great intro to, what's mostly a very fucking depressing first half of this part after a crazy victory on last week.
Yeah. Yeah. But also she said that right before her neck was snapped.
True. Also bad.
So,
Yep.
Little A, little B.
Filling out both columns here.
I feel like it could be seen as an omen.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it should have been. And especially now that we're coming up on the end of the original trilogy, it's interesting to ponder that original quest, that original dream here. It's good to call back to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Darrow's come a long way, but not very far intellectually, it appears. Okay.
Fucking idiot.
So chapter 50, Thunder and Lightning. The chapter heading is something of a callback, of course, to something that's also talked about in this chapter as well. The Institute, the friendship that Cassius and Darrow created and share. You're the thunder, I am the lightning. You know, I'm Mike Goodman and the lightning. That whole shtick is here, and we kind of get to reminisce about those old days. But before we get to that, we get a final conversation with Romulus, who is pissed.
Rightfully so. Why wouldn't he be pissed?
He's not having a good time. The whole losing of the docks of Ganymede, not getting all the ships that he expected, everything for him has kind of gone awry. And he's kind of sniffing out what Darrow was stinking in terms of the nukes and being false. And so he's extra like, maybe I sided with the wolves in sheep's clothing. I mean,
he did, but at the same time, there were no actual sheep either.
Right. Either way,
it was just wolf on wolf action.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with that. Yeah. So he tells Darrow that he's essentially banished from the Rimjob Dominion, which is kind of all Darrow could really hope for. At best, this started off as a shaky relationship, and the fact that he gets to leave without any hostility is A, lucky, but B, kind of a function of the fact that he's got a bigger Space Force. Like, what's he gonna do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah, he kind of fucked him over, and I feel like that'll come back to bite him a little bit, but he's also way the fuck off in the middle of nowhere in space, so
yeah,
what's he gonna do?
Right. What really is Romulus Elrod going to do now? I think it's so interesting that we get introduced to these very different critical characters, and then we also so quickly leave them, and we say we're never going to come back, and it's very much like, okay, do I believe you, Pierce? Are you going to leave them there, or are they going to come back as new toys in your toy box? Something to ponder.
I think they come back.
Yeah, they're too interesting not to, in my head. Mm-hmm. So I think we've touched on faith a lot, and specifically relating to Darrow. We enter the rest of this chapter before getting to the portion with Cassius with Roke's funeral. So it's the end of one friendship of the trio formally being cemented by launching him into the sun where he belongs. Either alive or dead. Either way, launch Roke directly into the sun. And it's interesting because Darrow talks about faith again. He's kind of reemerging on that subject. He wishes that Roke believed in an afterlife like he used to, and like Ragnar did at the end. But he himself, Darrow himself, doesn't believe in it. He wishes that sort of peace, that confirmation of serenity of the afterlife for Roke, but he doesn't believe that it's real. It's just kind of like he wishes that Roke was numb to the pain before he went.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's less about wanting Roke's spirit to be saved or anything like that, and more about thinking back on this man and wanting his last moments to be looking forward to something rather than just kind of staring into the void.
Yeah.
I think it's more just perception than anything else.
Definitely. And I think that this gets back to something that we've talked about a lot, which is that Darrow's become numb over the course of this book to a lot of different things, but Roke kind of drugged some feelings out of him again in a different way, where it confirms that he doesn't believe in the afterlife or in the veil, things of that nature. But he does kind of warm up to the idea of having feelings, and he has feelings, and he feels deep emotional loss for someone who literally wanted him dead, which is, I think, fascinating and different than kind of the Darrow that we knew before. You know, you could almost, to some degree, you could compare Roke and Karnas as antagonists of the two books, right? Of Golden Sun versus this book. And
yeah,
they effectively occupy the same place as an antagonist. It's just that one has a lot more backstory, but he was still going to stab him in the back and kill him just the same that Karnas was. Perhaps not literally put the blade to his neck, but Roke definitely was going to give him to Octavia, who was going to put the blade to his neck, which, Cassius does. So
literally dissecting him.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting parallel, and it's weird that he hurts so much for this and not every other individual life, you know?
But I think this plays into one of the problems that I have with Darrow that I think I'll get into later when we talk about Cassius.
Oh, you mean like in 2 questions? Okay.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be me if I didn't talk about the poetry that was used here at Roke's funeral as he's sent off to his grave in the sun, which is also a great image, a grave on the sun. Pretty cool. Darrow recites a very specific Shakespearean poem here from Cymbeline, which is considered one of the problem plays or forgotten plays. It exists in a spectrum of like not great Shakespeare. Also, we're not sure if we can properly attribute it to Shakespeare. There are some of those issues that exist, but it's generally considered Shakespearean. So the poem as it reads is, "Fear no more the heat o' the sun, nor the furious winter's rages. Though thou thy wordly task hast done, home art gone, and ta'en thy wages. Golden lads and girls all must, as chimney sweepers come to dust," which is very much, of course, the last couple lines are harkening back to the ashes to ashes, dust to dust mentality, but also the fact that chimney sweepers also come to dust chimneys, right? And so they're specifically seeking out dust.
That is their job.
Well, they're seeking out dust, which when you're talking about something like that is saying that it was inevitable as a warrior that Roke was going to die because he was seeking death being a warrior.
Okay.
So like that's sort of the analogy there. But the more important thing I think to harken back here is to the connection with Cymbeline to some degree. Cymbeline is known to have a main character named Imogen Heap, similar, of whom apparently dies in front of you, but was merely drugged, which I find very interesting with Darrow, because Darrow, at the beginning, appeared to have died, but was actually drugged and so survived. And that is exactly the same plot thread in that 4th act that happens in Cymbeline.
Yeah. First of all, I think Pierce Brown is an even bigger history, poetry nerd than you are. But
maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. But you've been picking up on all of them. So I don't know the behind the scenes of how much Googling you're doing, but I like to believe you just know this shit.
I mean, I know a decent amount. I didn't know all of this one. I'm going to be honest.
Okay.
But this is one that I was at the very least aware of. And when I read it the first time, I think I searched it and I read the whole play. And then, on this reread now, we're going through it. I'm picking it apart because I know the play.
Fair enough. So you mentioned this kind of following the parallel of Darrow, but maybe it's grasping at straws a little bit, but this also kind of follows a thread that happened to Roke in that he was poisoned and not like left unconscious, but didn't actually die.
At the gala. Yeah.
Yeah, at the gala.
That's interesting. I think that actually also kind of feeds back into that final line that as chimney sweepers come to dust, where there's sort of this inevitability of him returning, and so saving him and drugging him might be a way out of it. It's worth noting that the main character, Imogen's brothers, are there at this funeral for these 2 warriors of whom are dead, and they are singing this song over top of her grave. The story has a kind of Mulan-esque tone where she isn't supposed to be a warrior. She's not supposed to be there. They don't realize that it's her. And so there's kind of this hidden identity thing as well, which seems to also overlap with kind of Darrow. And also, if we wrap it back to what you were saying, Darrow's impression of Roke or Roke's impression of Darrow, either way, there's a secret being kind of hidden among that relationship. I think it fits.
By the way, that said, for a futuristic society, they sure do like to poison people.
True. There's a decent amount of it.
There's a lot of it. There's a lot of fucking poison.
A couple of those. Yeah.
I would think there'd be better ways to kill people several hundred years from now.
I mean, there are. They're called star shells, and you just land on them and they go splat. The people go splat.
Or you put them in a star shell and fire them at the sun.
Yes, but like on a very gradual curve, so they just rotate around it for a bit.
Or put them in a star shell and hit them with a fucking EMP, because apparently that works too.
It's a nasty situation to be in.
That's dumb. That's the dumb thing to not have a failsafe on. Anyway,
the section.
I think I already ranted about that one.
True. Fair. The section with Roke's funeral ends with a quick semi-Easter egg. I guess. I kind of feel like I'm only mentioning this because I'm going to be accused of not mentioning it if I don't, because people are so aware of it. But there's a conversation, spoilers for Good Will Hunting. There's a conversation near the end of Good Will Hunting where Robin Williams' character repeats, "It's not your fault." And he repeats it 4 times to a breaking down Matt Damon while he's breaking down in his arms. And I don't know if this is so much an Easter egg as much as it is just like a real human moment here that's shared between characters that's logical. I can imagine this in a number of different circumstances. And I've also seen people who have lost people close to them behave this way and kind of have those, you have people reassuring them, and it's also kind of like a release valve for their grief to say like, it's not your fault. And then they can kind of like just let more go in gushing waves. So I'm a mixed bag on whether or not it's an Easter egg, but I have to bring it up because otherwise if you bring it up, then I'm going to have to drink via our rules. So
if that's an Easter egg or if it's supposed to be one, that's pretty fucking weak. I think I agree with you. It's more of just kind of a real moment. It's a simple enough phrase. I could see it maybe like Pierce Brown got done with writing the section before this and he's sitting down for movie night and throws on Good Will Hunting and then comes back like a week later and starts writing the next section and just has that phrase in his mind. Maybe like if it's related, that's how I think it would be related. It just kind of
distant
zeitgeist kind of deal.
Yeah. So
I'm not drinking for that Easter egg.
Damn it.
Fuck.
Fuck. I had to try.
Yeah. Fair.
So,
but no.
Cassius and Darrow get some time to reflect together and share a drink among friends. They're sitting there in Roke's chambers, of which Darrow has claimed, which is kind of the sort of dour thing in the first place. He like leaves his books in place and everything else and doesn't rearrange or replace anything, which I understand at an emotional level of not wanting to like lose that as though he's still alive. It's kind of what Darrow points out, but also like, what? No, dude, like change shit as you need, like get rid of it. Stop living in your grief. better for your health. But he invites Cassius up and they go through all of the various holovids that were saved, that Roke had saved of the Institute. And we get a lot of different moments that are shared here between them, including some that we didn't see because we were locked in Darrow's point of view, like some answers to some questions in the first book you had about what happened with Roke and whether or not it was secretly all a betrayal and a plot with Leah and things of that nature. Sort of the like honest portrayal. But also Cassius is here just drinking some scotch, hanging out, having a good time, talking with a bro. Drink because they're drinking, but
yep, I suppose
some thoughts.
So. Oh, I got some thoughts
on this 5-page sequence.
Oh, God. So this entire time, I was just thinking about how stupid of an idea that was for Darrow to invite Cassius there. And here's kind of the point where it was kind of culminating in my understanding that Darrow is making decisions more and more emotionally in this book, even though he's constantly talking about how the box took everything away from him. Like he's chasing emotional connections is kind of what it feels like. In the past, he rarely let the emotions get in his way. And if that's not entirely true, it was that those emotions kind of led him in the right direction anyway. Now the opposite is kind of true in that he's entirely open. He's not hiding anything anymore for the most part. Like I can't think of a big secret that he's hiding right now. But all he wants is the genuine feelings of friendship that he had. And this kind of makes for a fatal, maybe literally, mistake of letting sort of the Cassius earworm into his brain. He's slipping up. And I think it's entirely emotionally driven.
Yeah.
And he's trying to like hold on to those old connections.
I can't help but think the same thing to varying degrees, right? I think that there's also something to be said about a number of the different things that Cassius brings up here, which is, the fact that they are these different elements of thunder and lightning. they are without war. They're just men without kind of the violent impulses. And I find that really interesting, especially given kind of the betrayal that you're obviously talking about, and sort of the reflection that Darrow has on these memories. Is that I think Cassius is saying that if it weren't for war, if it weren't for these violent circumstances, they would be incredible friends, and they would just be men. They wouldn't have the same internal drive. They wouldn't be the same people at all without the circumstances. So I think that it's an interesting point, and I'm glad that you also brought up the other component relating to the way that Darrow's kind of his emotionality throughout the books and how that's changed here.
I don't know. I don't think that they would be friends without the war. I think that friendship was severed before war happened. And even now, like, even if Julian's death was forgiven now, that's a long fucking time to be in a blood feud with somebody.
Yeah, okay, let me clarify a little bit. So my picture is the initial meeting that like Cassius and Darrow have well before they go to the Institute, where he invites Darrow out to Aegea, and Darrow doesn't fully know even gold lingo at that point. And so he avoids going and hanging out with him. But I think they would have been friends, or they could have been. But a combination, when I say war, I'm thinking about the entirety of society and the Institute and everything else. Because Darrow wouldn't be even in this situation if like the color paradigm didn't exist. You know, it wouldn't be a problem, right? Darrow might also not be his friend because in theory he's a red, and you know, even if there were blending of colors, I don't know. Anyway, I still think that it's a worthwhile point, though, that I think that they would have been friends could you unwind the clock to like the 70th page of Red Rising? Yeah, they could have before everything else happened.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that these pages, too, contain some wonderful character development between the two. There are just so many warm moments of them reflecting that it also extra sours the betrayal at the end here, right? At the very end. There are just so many moments where they're reflecting and they're talking about like the different moments with Quinn where, you know, Cassius and Quinn had their moment together while Roke was still pining after Leah before Leah died. Leah gets stolen by wolves from the cairn that Darrow built, which is terrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, like
didn't build it deep enough.
Yeah, that's awful. Parents don't even get the body. Like, Jesus. Yeah, bad time. Bad time, that Institute. Bad time.
Yeah.
There's just like a lot of warmth here, and you just want to like sit and pal around with him a little bit. I wanted to bring up something for those of you who'd listened to our episode over on High Key Obsessed, where we were guests over there with Thomas. I don't know why I said it that way. Anyway, we were guests with Thomas. I immediately rejected the notion of the question that I was asked about Severo and Cassius and said Roke instead. And that was partially because I didn't want to hint at anything and like build anything up to PJ so much. But I do actually pick Cassius's relationship over Roke's or Severo's in this circumstance, because I do think that there was so much that was built there on that core friendship, and that it was a betrayal that I think on a long enough timeline with enough experience, had they not been pitted against each other, let's say the Academy thing works out and the long plan that Fitchner had works out, where Darrow would gradually become the sovereign over a number of years, decades of time. I think that Cassius and Darrow would have eventually became, at the very least, not enemies again and friendly. And I think that's kind of what we experience here. But at the same time, maybe it's just a taste. Maybe it's just a lick of that. And maybe it's all a lie. So, yeah.
I don't think it's a lie. I don't think anything here is a lie. I think this entire conversation, like this entire scene that we're talking about with Darrow and Cassius kind of reminiscing over things, when they're talking about, I don't know, Darrow apologizing for the killing of Julian and them just kind of hashing it out a little bit and talking like old friends. I don't think either of them say anything untruthful.
No.
But even if that sort of transgression is absolved in the eyes of Cassius, there's still many other things that Cassius is personally at odds with against Darrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at this point, even without the familial reasons for hating each other or for Cassius hating Darrow, I think the feud is too large to resolve over Scotch.
Yeah, I think the feud is society, right? Because I think that to some degree, Cassius kind of, in this conversation, he doesn't fully let go of Julian and what had to be done in those moments, but they do actually talk about it in a real way for the first time, right? And he's kind of like, I killed 2 of your brothers, and he's like, oh, I didn't really care about Karnas. and he's kind of like, yeah.
What did he say? Like, you can keep Karnas.
Yeah, you can keep Karnas, like right. And it's, you know, I think that it's also maybe Cassius coming to terms with the reality of what he was forced through in the Institute, what the Institute forced on the 2 of them. And that's why he hasn't really been able to come for his blood since, you know, he was made a fool at the gala. But
yeah, it was very unfair of Cassius to sort of come after Darrow so harshly for the death of Julian.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was supposed to happen?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's a very like teen thing to do, which is also how it's painted, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
So
that's a good point.
There are only a couple more things here, but I really like the conversation here that happens near the end, which is, I'm tired of this war, Darrow. He replies, so am I, and if I could bring Julian back to you, I would, but this war is for him, or men like him, the decent. It's for the quiet and gentle, who know how the world should be, but can't shout louder than the bastards. I think what's really interesting here is that Darrow has spent a lot of time reflecting, and it's been quoted a couple of times as headers, various sections, but the quote that was said by Karnas Albalona, but all we have is a shout in the wind. And this is almost a reflection directly of that quote here. You can't shout louder than bastards. All we have is a shout in the wind. The bastards like Karnas and like Darrow and like Cassius in these situations are shouting very loudly, and they drown out they're the warlords. They drown out a lot of the other voices that could and perhaps should be in power. But the voices of the loud are the ones that are in power.
I mean, ain't that the truth as far as current society goes too?
Yeah. Right.
Like if being loud and being the vocal minority wasn't so rewarded, it'd be interesting to see how social today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People are fucking crazy.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But it's led us to an entire
so am I,
crazed,
so I guess
crazed presidency. So there's that.
Yeah.
It stretches further, of course, within the society. There's the obvious perceived wrongdoing of Darrow on behalf of Julian, but there's also the like underpinnings or undertones while they're talking where not only is there forgiveness, but there's understanding from Cassius's side as to Darrow's family. Darrow's family is being repressed within the system. And so it's like, yeah, well, I had to kill your brother because you fuckers decided that was the way the rules are. Like, my family doesn't even get to be a real family above ground. And like, we're
mole people.
Right, exactly. And like, he's kind of, they don't say that obviously, but they talk about Kieran. They talk about marrying Kieran marrying Dio. And it's, man, there's this entire other element to family here that's an entire layer to unpack on top of all the other political stuff. But yeah,
it's true.
I think it's a fantastically written chapter if Cassius weren't such a fuckhead in betraying Darrow here.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
You're like,
I really did. I was so angry. I was so upset reading this chapter and just vindicated by the end of it.
You've been talking about it for a bit.
I was so upset.
So, chapter 51, Pandora, which is the ship that Antonia controls, the Julii ship. We shift from that night with Cassius to a meeting with the newly captured fleet of Antonia at Victra's hands, which is how it's just so satisfying for her.
I loved the message sent through. Bitch captured, Cavax free, victory mine. Just simple and tells you everything you need to know.
You know, I think it's also a great callback to some degree to the first book because Victra like self-identifies as a bitch, which is funny in a way where she like totally nodded and like agreed in the first book. And by the way, how evil she's become since those moments.
Was that Victra at that point?
No. That was Antonia. Sorry. Did I say Victra? I meant Antonia.
You did say Victra.
Antonia self-identified as a bitch. My bad.
Yeah.
In the first book, because Victra was not introduced until the second. So,
right.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great moment between them. And man, what a good thing for Victra. Basically to have like open rebellion happen on her mom's vessels because they're like, yeah, fuck her. We don't like her. We like you. You're technically the inheritor by the will, so we agree. Easy.
Exactly.
But before we get to, talking about more here in terms of what's going on in the ships, we get Sophocles. Oh, cute fox. Yes. Oh, it's so nice. It's so nice. Except for that mouth kiss, that open mouth kiss. What the fuck was that?
Yeah. So I've been trying to figure that out, and I think I've got an idea. I think calling it an open mouth kiss was more for shock value. I think it's
Victra
more like,
recoils even.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. All right. I don't have a whole much of a leg to stand on then. Never mind. I was going to say it's kind of like how when some larger slobbery dogs come running towards their masters, just kind of lick their face.
It actually does feel similar. She doesn't recoil. She cringes, but it's,
Yeah, just kind of him with his mouth agape getting licked by the fox. Is kind of what I imagine.
Yes, I agree. That's also what I imagined. But, open mouth kiss.
Describing it like an open mouth kiss is kind of funny.
Yeah. I mean, if we're considering like dog kisses like licks, okay, fine. Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we move on from...
Well, what else would it be? It's a fox.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Do you kiss the whole snout? Do you like swallow it? Like, how does that work?
Kavax probably could.
I know. It's open mouth kiss, man. That's why I'm confused.
Form CPR
on the fox. On Sophocles. It's a moment. So we cut to our two prisoners, Thistle and Antonia, and whoever gives information to Darrow first gets to live. Except, like, of course, Antonia's not going to get to live if Victra says anything about that. Like, there's no way Victra's gonna let Antonia live.
I mean, I could see Victra letting Antonia live in some sort of loophole-ish way where she puts her in an escape pod without steering or food or water and fires her towards the sun.
It'd take a bit. That'd be good reflection for her.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully there's a viewport, like right facing the sun, just staring at impending doom. What do you think would happen first? Starvation, thirst, or getting cooked?
Man, straight to the sun is interesting because a lot of the travel that's timed out here is, by the way, actually timed out, which is really interesting. Scientifically timed between the planets, like very well done based on the speeds of the engines. But the travel distance straight to the sun, like you could just fire in a straight line effectively. You just have to compensate for the gravitational forces of the planets as you pass.
I'm saying.
Well, what I was
from here, I'm curious if it's going to be long enough where she'd die of hunger or starvation.
I think she would die of hunger before she would die of the sun, and that's what I don't know. Right, because it took like 49 days for them to get from the moon to Luna, but I don't know if that's based on the rotation and where they were at the time. So that's the part that I'm trying to quantify.
Yeah, but you don't have to get to the sun. We're getting into the weeds with this, and I have no reason why. But you don't have to get to the sun before you die of sun exposure.
True. No, yeah, good point. You're shot directly at the sun, and you're just in the sun all the time. Fair point.
Yeah.
I was not thinking about that. I was thinking about literally being consumed by the sun. Like, touch the surface. But you wouldn't touch it because you wouldn't make it that far. Right. Your pod wouldn't anyway. Cool. Yeah. Wild. Bad time. Bad time.
Sorry. That got a little bit more in-depth than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's worth it. Chapter 52, Teeth.
Teeth is such a good name for this chapter.
Man, it's such a good name. This chapter, I think, is like a bit of magic, to be honest. It's fascinating because Pierce Brown in this first trilogy has trapped us within this one point of view, and we're only given Darrow's perspective on everything. But we're still through the system of watching the prison video, given basically two different POVs, or like this weird omniscient POV on the situation, which is unique, and it's a great way of handling it and like giving us a way to see what happens without Darrow in the room for the first time in the entire series, you know?
Yeah. It's honestly done seamlessly enough that I hadn't taken that into consideration, but it's really, really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm happy with it.
I think the trick of this chapter isn't just the one that Pierce is pulling with the POV, but it's a careful game that Antonia plays to rile up Thistle enough to get close, to pull her hair through the bars, and to literally cave her skull in. And it's a fucking gruesome moment here, with her skull bending around the bars of her cell. Like, oh.
So this, for the longest time, was giving me issues as far as trying to imagine what this looked like.
The cell. What the cell.
The cell itself. Like how... Because I imagined it, even though it says it like 5 fucking times that there's bars in between the individual cells. So they're like looking at each other. But I still imagined it like a typical like prison cell where there's walls between the cells and then bars kind of on one wall across the entire line of it. So I was thinking Antonia had to like reach her hand around and like get into the other cell and somehow have enough leverage to beat Thistle's fucking skull in. But no, I'm just a dumb idiot who can't read, apparently, which we knew, which welcome to the show.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to fix here, kind of.
Yeah, but it kind of goes to show that no matter how many times you describe in your book what something looks like, someone's going to miss it. And that someone's me.
Yep.
Yep.
Just to clarify, I think that I actually, out of any moment in the series, this was the one that ended up being the most confusing for me on first read through, and in subsequent read throughs. It's something that I've just kind of breezed over without thinking about it. But I agree with you. I think that it's so tucked into the dialogue. He is very clearly trying to point it out by burying explanation of what's going on, by actively showing the room through characters' actions and perspectives, but it just wasn't perfectly clear. Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Well, it was perfectly clear. I just missed it.
Well, what I'm saying is it wasn't perfectly clear because we missed it, because we glance over this and we can't fully picture the room.
Okay.
Which I definitely agree with you on. I think that when I started to like absolutely pick it apart at the slow level, it's like, oh yeah, clearly, okay, there's bars between the jail cells. Also, what prison has bars between the jail cells? Because you get this shit. Like, this would happen.
Like, you know? Holding cells in drunk tanks.
Yeah, I guess, and that's maybe the thing, is that these are more holding cells for prisoners of war. So that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
You're not going to see people try to strangle each other through a holding cell.
Well, normal. Apparently you are.
Yeah, we literally see Thistle's skull rip.
Mm-hmm.
Also not on the Deadpool for some reason. Okay.
Well, she's a Howler.
Yeah, I mean, she was not a Howler at the end of Golden Sun. So, yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Want me to guess?
No, because I'm not taking a fucking shot for that. So, Antonia trying to sell her sister coming in. Obviously, Darrow and everyone else is rushing down. They're trying to get there to actually free Thistle before this happens, before this gruesome mess happens. But it doesn't. Victra is the first one there. And Antonia trying to sell her sister on needing her is hilarious to me, and absolutely does not land with Victra herself. Victra literally breaks her face. And I love that description of just, it's pure. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. Breaks her face.
Breaks her face.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yes.
Unfortunate for Antonia to be turned into a mush face.
Yep. She was very... I don't know, proud of her beauty. She was aware of it, certainly, and used it as a weapon oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And now she's a mushy face. So, joke's on her, I guess.
Yeah, she deserved it.
I think it said the orbital bone was pulverized later on.
Yeah. Antonia actually, like when I said mush face, like she really doesn't have a formable face.
Yeah, it is a literal must face.
Which it's shocking to me that she can actually, as a note, it's shocking to me that she can actually even get through the next couple chapters without a heavy sedative, without some kind of pain relief. Because
do we know for sure that she doesn't?
I mean, if I were Darrow, I wouldn't give. Well, Darrow's been making all kinds of nonsensical decisions.
Yeah,
so
Darrow's
maybe.
been fucking nightmare terrorist. Like, he's been a bad terrorist. He's been a really bad terrorist.
True. The line that I find the most worth talking about here, though, is this one that we've noted a couple of times throughout the read. You know, just her head is caved in. I stare at it, wondering why I'm not horrified at the scene. Some part of me has died, but when did it die? When did I notice? And this
why
is
did I not notice?
Why did I not notice? Yep. Do you think you can pinpoint the time when Darrow's spirit broke? Like, what moment do you really think it happened?
I think the answer that is kind of obvious here, and the answer that probably people would be expected to come to, or like that readers would be expected to come to in this moment, would be the box. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I don't think he's completely broken. I think he's a little bit fragmented. He still holds on to emotion, like I said, with Cassius, but he still feels strongly for his friends, and even those who used to be close friends. And Thistle was never either of those.
Yeah, I mean,
she was never really close to him.
She was an original Howler.
Yeah, but she was closer to the Howlers than, like, she was just kind of part of the Howlers. He never really interacted with her, as far as I saw.
Yeah, fair.
Individually, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough because he was fairly certain in the last book that Thistle was the one that wouldn't follow him out of the Howlers, and there were a handful that he was commenting on that he was like pretty sure once they find out they won't follow me. Thistle was one of them. Thistle's call out to Darrow as well here, I think, is interesting because she doesn't apologize purely, but she kind of comes around in a way that I don't think Tactus or Roke really did in their last moments before they died. She sort of said that, I know that Darrow won't do these kind of cruel things. I know that he'll be better than the Jackal is. And she kind of has I think, a more complete 180 than I think Tactus does. But she's not as well known of a character to us because we don't get that much time with her. I feel like she's actually critically underplayed inside of the story.
You're saying Thistle is underplayed?
Yeah. I feel like if we would have gotten to know Thistle better, but we didn't, obviously, because of the circumstances of events, I think that her betrayal and then come around would be better
I think
than Tactus's.
Maybe. I guess it depends. It depends on if she has more time in what she actually says.
Yeah.
Because Darrow makes a good point that she never mentions in her apology or in her pleading, in that she was planning on betraying the Howlers too. They were supposed to be at the
gala.
Triumph.
Or the Triumph, yeah. Sorry.
So she was going to be assisting in murdering all of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she never addresses that, which could be just her trying to appeal directly to Darrow. And it could be, well, it's definitely her appealing directly to Darrow, but it's either she was trying to pick things that directly affected him as a means of getting his attention, being genuine, or she's making up what she feels bad about and didn't take the Howlers into consideration when apologizing,
mm-hmm.
which one could argue means that she doesn't actually care about that betrayal. So it'd be interesting to see what her apology would look like if it wasn't under duress like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the critical point that you just brought up is under duress, which is, ultimately where it comes from. But sadly, Rip Thistle, you probably get shot into the sun, but we don't talk about it. Maybe. I don't know. Probably. Most people get shot into the sun.
I think they would have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
it is efficient.
Ragnar, Roke, Porque no los Thistle.
Unless they just used it as fuel. Any bodies that end up on the ship, they just burn them.
Yeah. I mean, you could.
What do you do with bodies in space?
You launch them at the sun.
I guess you throw them out the airlock.
No, launch them at the sun. Launch them at the sun. Launch them at the sun.
I mean, I want that, but that takes some extra fuel and extra materials. It's easier to just kind of chuck them out the airlock.
I'm sure the Blues can do the math in no time, and it's barely any materials. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, but it's more than pressing a button that opens up into the void of space.
Here we are in the weeds again. Chapter 53, yep. Silence. What a perfect segue.
Yes.
Darrow's certainly having trouble sleeping lately, like he normally does in these moments after either committing, genocide, killing a bunch of people, which is in its own form kind of genocide, or like murdering friends or watching close people die. No shock. He's having trouble sleeping.
It's a tough life.
It's tough when you like literally live the life of a crazed warlord.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, at least he's not Ares right now, right?
Sure. The quiet moment here with Holiday where they're sharing a tin of whiskey, which we have to drink for, is a great one. It's really funny that obviously it's presented in a coffee cup. He drinks it and he's like, this is whiskey. And she's like, you're catching on. It's just
I liked how it was described. I take a sip of coffee. This is whiskey. What exactly is it? 416.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it was written really, really well.
I have to say in this last 100 pages that we've read, the quips have been whip smart. They've all been so funny, so good. And this is what I think of when I think of one of these quips.
Go on. I sip the coffee. This is whiskey.
Yeah. You catch on quick. She winks at me boyishly. It's great. It's a great moment. It's a very human moment, and it adds so much to Holiday's character. Love Holiday. Mm-hmm. Great character.
Yeah.
And they share stories here as well. Holiday gives us a bit about Earth, which is wonderful. As we talked about, we don't get a whole lot of Earth in the picture, obviously, since the Conquering and the whole World War III thing. You can almost imagine what she's describing, the area that she's been from, as Kansas. I get this picture of totally Superman-ish Clark Kent, Kansas, just fucking Smallville, the way that she describes everything, raised with Trig and whatnot. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. So I got Iowa, but for the same reasons you got Kansas. So I'm totally on board with you.
Yeah.
That said, does that make Holiday Superman?
Maybe. Trig was Superman.
Trig was Superman.
Trig died.
So Aja has kryptonite in her razor then.
Yes. This is the crossover we all wanted.
There we go. This is really what this entire series was about. This is Clark Kent fan fiction.
All right.
Centering around
Aja is Lex
died
Luthor.
within 2 chapters.
Octavia. Octavia's Lex Luthor. Jackal's the Joker. Where else are we going? Severo is Robin.
Batman. Oh, Robin.
No, Darrow's okay. Batman. Kind of. Maybe Quicksilver's Batman.
Yeah, Quicksilver has to be Batman.
Yeah. Darrow's
right.
Fucking
Weeds again.
Nightwing.
Let's go.
No, that was worth it. But yeah, no, it's great to see kind of the family with Trig and everything else, and getting kind of the backstory here with Ephraim, Trig's fiance. We find out that he's a Grey as well, works security for museums and the like, and he's kind of a whiz inside of that space. He joined the Sons on Luna after Ephraim was informed of Trig's death. And I think that that's very interesting. It speaks to the more general narrative of what happens with radicalization when people close are harmed by an opposing force, by something else, is obviously people are immediately radicalized against it because they care about the people that are close to them. And I think that it also paints a larger picture of probably what's going on in society right now. With so many people being actively a part of the Sons of Ares, there are likely society that's striking out against them to fight the Sons, but there are obvious casualties either within the Sons or side effects that are leading more people to join the Sons and to kind of change and defect. And I think that's really well planted and talked about here by Pierce.
I don't know if I'm just reading too far into this because we're analyzing this book. So
we should have called this podcast "Reading Too Far Into This." Is what we should have called.
Yeah,
it.
That's fair.
I'm just kidding.
But this gave me Suspicion vibes. Ephraim is suddenly, because he was a character introduced before, sort of mysterious, didn't know anything about him. He's left intentionally on the table as a mention and then nothing else. But suddenly he's like important, and he's a part of the Sons of Ares, and he has connections to Trig, obviously, but Holiday as well. He's gone dark. I feel like this is being built up for him to be suddenly like the guy that swoops in and saves the day, or like becomes the sort of
the Superman
linchpin character. Yeah, the Superman of some specific plot,
of some Zack Snyder Justice League, perhaps.
I haven't seen that.
I have. It's fine. Moving on.
All right, there we go.
It's worth anyone who's listening. It's worth your time. Continue.
Okay, that calling it fine doesn't seem.
No. I meant your comment. It's fine. It's fine to move on. The movie is much better than the other version of the movie.
Okay, that's not.
It's a low bar.
But like I don't know if I'm just in a unique situation where I'm analyzing everything in this book a little bit more than it should be, or if it's actually being set up as kind of a savior character or a character that's going to burn bright for a chapter.
Yeah, here within the last 50 pages. I think that's an interesting point. I think that you are so afraid of the story having some kind of turn like that, some kind of Deus Ex, that you're terrified.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, I think, the logical response at this point. So I don't blame you, but I'm not going to answer your question.
No, I didn't ask a question because I know you won't answer anything.
Okay.
I posited a theory, and you can respond to it as you see fit.
So,
but non-response means I'm right.
That's not fair. With that, we're going to move into
I'm right.
Terrifying. With that, we receive a communique that comes through the Jackal, broadcasting to all of the ships. It's on delay.
Are you from like the 1940s or something?
Give me a fucking break. I was using my thesaurus, dude. I was just thumbing through.
Actually using your thesaurus?
No, I wasn't. I wrote down communique because I'm a fucking asshole. So the Jackal kills Darrow's uncle Neril live on TV, The Hollow, for everyone to see, in a complete show of violence that starts a revolution, which is not unlike one that Darrow might inspire on the ships that he boards. It's a fascinating perspective of what it takes to like lead a revolution, and it's a counter-revolution that the Jackal is inspiring among the Rising against the Golds. And it's a fascinating mirror into the way that their characters mirror over the course of this series, and especially over the course of the last chunk of this book.
Yeah.
So, worst of all, of course, from the moment here is that Sephi is the one leading the rebellion aboard the ships. She, the very powerful Obsidian, of whom wields so much social control over a lot of these low colors, is leading this charge.
So this kind of surprises me. It's not so much surprising that she took up any sort of leadership, but more that the Reds actually follow her. And it's not everybody, of course, but she's kind of the leader of the people that are further overcrowding their home of Tinos. Like, there seems to be a lot of hostility towards the Obsidians in general. Not necessarily to the same level as towards the Golds, but it's interesting that it's not a Red taking up the lead here.
Yeah, and I think some of that reality comes down to who can control the Golds, and that's going to be the Obsidians. They're the only ones who've ever actually been able to contest until this uprising.
That's
and
a good point.
It's arguable that even the Reds themselves, without realizing that they are just a tide of people that can run over everything else, have pretty much sat still because they're so afraid individually of their one-on-one nature with Golds. And that's why it took Darrow, being a Red that is a Gold, to kind of pull him up out of it. But I agree with you. Yeah, it is interesting that they don't lean on a different layer. And I think in some other distant reality, Dancer would be in a similar situation, because he actually doesn't like the Golds. He doesn't like the idea of golds. He actually thinks, he doesn't core think, but he does have opinions that the Rising is as much against society as it is against gold, of which Darrow disagrees with because he understands and he's lived among the golds. And he's like, not all golds are bad, especially that Cassius guy. He's really not bad, guys. Really not bad. That one. He's good. He's a good boy.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's good.
You sound like you believe it.
Yeah, I very much on the side of gold. I love Cassius. I think he's a good character, and I think he deserves to be redeemed in the story arc. No, he's not. He's a terrible fucking human, and he's going to betray you, Darrow.
Yeah, I'd love to meet a Cassius, Dan. With that, Chapter 54, The Goblin and the Gold. We're king of transitions this week.
It's so well done.
Oh, man. We are in a panic state where the golds have been captured and held by Sephi, namely Mustang and Cassius. Cassius, of course, being hung. I find in this moment Severo muttering
Mustang
the phrase.
knows that he's hung.
Well, that's a different there, PJ. Also, it's like alluded that like Darrow has a really big penis, and that means Mickey made his penis really big. That's an entirely separate conversation that gets back to the gold.
And I expect it to be answered by the end of the book.
Well,
as we stated,
definitely a conversation we'll have.
We got to know the genetic kind of parts.
We got to know how it works. Yeah, there's this whole panic state, of course. I find in this moment Severo muttering the phrase, death begets death, begets death, begets death. Again, here, the second time in the chapter section that we're reading is interesting because Severo seems to have kind of sobered up a bit from being the childlike leader he was earlier on to being this kind of mature person who understands what needs to be done. It's also worth pointing out that death begets death has been said 7 times in the series, which is like maybe a theme, but
it's not a theme. Theme is cooks.
Oh.
Can't fuck with that.
Oh, fuck.
The theme is always cooks, and I will not let you say otherwise.
You're right. My bad. But the other bit about Severo being a good leader now, as opposed to a piece of shit child.
Well, I mean, does kill himself here.
Ooh, tries to, kind of. Yeah. I really like the line. The barbarity of it all chills me. What'd you make of the scene with Sephi and the low colors putting Cassius on trial?
Kill that bitch. Oh, man. What are you waiting for?
oh, man.
Why was he left for last?
Well, I mean, with the fireworks, you end with a big bang, right?
Yeah.
Right? There's a nice little gap there.
He's the title fight. I get it. I just want him dead, but he doesn't die, and then he ruins everything that we want.
Despite all circumstances, he doesn't die. We've sat here over the course of 100 pages, at least, of him being captured, and he doesn't die. He's still alive. Doing well.
I think it ends up being like 4 months or something like that.
Yeah, 4 months, which is nuts. We know it took like almost 2 months for them to travel here, so there's a decent period of time where the entire war, of course, with Roke's army captured. Yeah,
there's still a long fucking time. I would think at least a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome would start taking hold. But it doesn't.
I think he was faking Stockholm Syndrome with Darrow.
Of course he was. Of course he was. Not even Stockholm. Like, it's not even that. He's just lying.
I think what's really interesting here is that Darrow and Mustang are, of course, charging in with Severo having already fucked off, winking in the bushes somewhere. They're obviously charging in, and they think that the way that they can convince the Obsidians is through speech. But they've already been exposed to this. They're like doubling down on the mistakes that they've already made together with the Obsidians. And obviously the Obsidians are the one in control, despite all the other low colors being there. They think that they can talk them out of the brutality that's about to happen to Cassius. He's hung. And then within the middle of that, Severo, as Ares, arrives center stage and gives a magnificent speech talking about murderers and those who do wrong on others, and then also says, oh, hey, I'm a murderer. I should be hung. Hangs himself up. And man, is that... I honestly, I think that on reflection, this is one of my favorite moments in the entire book.
Yeah.
I think it is an incredible moment.
It is very good. It's certainly one of my favorite moments from Severo.
I think that it also shows a different depth. It shows a depth where Severo, without talking with Darrow and Mustang about their experience with the Obsidians on the ice, understands the Obsidian culture because he was such close friends with Ragnar. He lived with him and fought alongside him for a year, and they became buddies. And so he has this understanding of the only way that I'm going to be able to prove this to all of you is by showing physically through action and making you make the choice. What's the right choice? And that's what he poses to Sephi. And I think that is brilliant. This is maybe my favorite scene in the series upon many rereads. It's so good. It
is completely dependent on no one else cutting him down first, though, which there were some, it was close. There were some Reds that were being like thrown up by other Reds to cut him down. And the fact that Sephi was the one to cut both of them down was, I think, almost entirely chance.
I think it was an intentional head nod towards
it. It was intentional, and that was Severo's intention. But if it had taken Sephi 30 more seconds to decide, I think Severo would have been cut down anyway, and Cassius would have died like he should have.
And that's fair. And I also think that it's interesting that Darrow's perspective is witnessing the death of one friend to see the rebirth of another is fantastic in that way, where Severo is given new life, but Cassius might die for that new life. And fascinatingly, if we're talking about mirrors inside of this, at the end of this, Severo dies so that Cassius can live and regain his spot in society to some degree, his honor. So there's another mirror point right here that's made between the two of them.
Yeah.
Right? It's fucked.
I will agree with you.
Severo's point. I love Severo's character here, but I think it's also interesting that even Darrow reflects in this moment of like losing a friend to gain a friend. And in the end, his friend, in quotes, killed his best friend for what he believed in. I also love the final lines that Severo says here, seeming to be only addressing Victra, even though it's kind of commanding it out to the entire room. They're wonderful.
We are the new age, the new world. And if we're to show the way, then we better damn well make it a better one. I am Patrick John, and I am no longer afraid. And then this is where I do the backflip, right?
Yeah, I think you do a backflip now.
Yeah.
To show off.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. Then all the girls like swoon.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah. Well, PJ, you made my heart thump like a drum. So good work. If you're calling out to me, here I am. Yeah, no, it's a fantastic moment. And of course, the next section is called The Ignoble House Barco, which I think is a brilliant chapter title for the way that this whole thing goes. And we find out that Victra is so pissed off about all of the brilliance that happens over that chapter that she's like, all right, I actually do love you. I don't want you to die. You crazy motherfucker. You're such a brilliant genius. Fuck you. And they get married.
We're nothing. We're dating. We're nothing again. We're married. That's basically how this entire relationship went over the course of like a month or two.
Right. Well, 4 months probably with Cassius and whatnot. But
we'll give it 6 months, and that's still ridiculous.
Yeah, it's fascinating, but I think they also fit each other so well, which is what I find so great
super well
about the characteristics and the characters that Pierce has built is it was clear that Victra was never the successor to Mustang in a relationship way, and to connect her with Severo makes a lot more sense in the way that they both behave.
I feel like Darrow would be a much better decision maker if he had Victra in his bed next to him, though.
Wow. Yeah. I'm going to hold you to that. We're going to talk about that.
I mean,
a couple of weeks at least. What's crazy...
I will hold myself to that. I absolutely believe that.
That's fair. We're moving on here. Chapter 55, as we mentioned, the Ignoble House Barca. We're getting laced moments here of a plan, one that is Mustang's from earlier in chapter 53, The Silence, talked about very, very at the very beginning, that Mickey is executing clearly here throughout. What do you think that plan is? What do you think that moment is buried? Well, do you think that it's something that we've seen, that we haven't seen?
I think it's something we haven't seen yet. We know that the doctor's kind of disturbed by the idea based on like her reactions to things.
Virany.
Virany. So for that reason, I think it's something animal human hybrid kind of carving thing. I think it's a Wolfcentaur. I think the Howlers are going to I think the Howlers are going to suddenly become carved into Wolfcentaurs.
No, I'm gonna refute that and move on. I don't try to like take hard stances on your opinions, but I'm just like,
what do you think that would look like, though? That'd be super unbalanced.
Dude, it'd be so front heavy, it would be a problem. Like, you need like a weird back bending spine where like the wolf would come up so
Mickey
much.
can do that. Like I believe in Mickey. Do you not believe in Mickey?
It'd be like a snake, you know? Like it would have like the bend of a snake's back. It'd be a real problem.
All right, so we'll just put the torso in the center of the wolf.
That doesn't help anything, PJ.
It balances it.
Yeah, no. Moving on. I also really enjoy the back and forth that happens here, comparing the injuries that have been suffered.
I hate that you're able to just move on like that. All right. I'm here thinking about wolf centaurs.
I'm so in charge of this podcast that I don't have a...
we'll see about that. Like, you're the first to go.
You're in charge of the memes, so I don't know, man.
I have not been doing great on that one.
Comparing the injuries that
quit getting caught up on this, Crossland. Keep going,
man. I love the comparison of injuries as they're like walking down the hallways, like blah blah blah, I've been through this, and he's like blah blah blah, I've been through that, and Darrow's like, well, I've been carved twice, and he's like, oh, always the fucking carving, you always gotta bring that up. It's great.
This reminded me of like me and you bickering about things
like we just were over the horse centaur.
Not quite that.
The wolf centaur, sorry.
But just, you always play the colorblind card and I never have a follow-up.
I ultimately win because it's a genetic problem. Just like Darrow wins because it's a genetic
I don't think that's a genetic problem. That
Fair
was
point.
A choice.
Darrow's choice?
He could have said nope.
Okay. I thought you were talking about me. I was like, I don't have a choice at the colorblindness.
Oh, no.
No,
Darrow wasn't genetically born a carved up gold red amalgam.
True. It's interesting. The other interesting part of this section is that we find out that Sephi used the opportunity of the riots to pull a coup to gain control of all of the Obsidians and call them just the Obsidian.
I think that was kind of inevitable. Not necessarily that Sephi would be the leader, but that they would sort of consolidate.
Yeah.
Because they're no longer working towards separate goals and they're no longer separate factions. They are the Obsidian. They have one goal, and it makes sense for them to be unified.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the gain of Sephi unifying them is really just unifying different planets worth of Obsidians, of which several of the different like war chiefs she had already rallied under her banner. Now she effectively has her color under a larger banner, which is fantastic for her, of course.
Yeah.
Then we lean into a wedding between Severo and Victra Albarca. She's taking his name instead of keeping her own because her name is tainted. Awful. Of course, she wants to reject her name at every turn, so it just makes sense for her, even in the last moment, to take that. Severo was actually willing to take her name.
And was confused when she said otherwise.
Yeah, was very confused. I think that's just a great warm moment, especially since we know that Severo's body is a cold corpse later.
Yep.
It's like the Barca name lives on. But I think that Darrow mentions it's a great moment of normalcy here and unity. And I think that it is. I think that there's a lot of warmth that comes into the scene. I mentioned it so many times that Pierce's storytelling when it comes to these like warm, heartfelt moments really actually brings me back to like Tolkien's moments in the Shire and kind of the way that everything feels like this sort of drunken revelry and shouting and praising and kind of no one's bearing down on us. There are no problems. We're all just hanging out and having a good time. And I really get that here in the wedding section.
Yeah, that's a super good call. Yeah, that definitely evokes feelings similar to that of the Shire. I'm on board with you.
We get a number of conversations here that I don't think are, worthy of breaking down entirely, but it's worth mentioning. Victra's conversation with Darrow is wonderful. The moment where she's wearing heels that are too small for her from Antonia's closet, pushing Clown to go ask Pebble for a dance, and him being too shy and maybe also too drunk at the same time, but needing another drink in order to consider doing it. Cavax and Daxo and their side conversations and dances, they're all fantastic moments that kind of happen within the dance. It's just like, man, I wish we could just hold this moment of this wedding still in time so that nothing would change.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the book and the series should just end here. You know what? I'm calling it. That's the end of the book. That's the end of the series. We are Words and Whiskey. Goodbye, folks. I hope you enjoyed the book.
We move into chapter 56.
Damn
in
it.
Time, which is just a brutal rendition of, in the previous chapter, it ends off with Holiday handing off a note that the Jackal has a private line open for Darrow. And Jesus, the Jackal is frothing at the mouth this chapter, especially when he confirms that he actually killed Quinn, which ultimately led to Rogue's fall. Yeah, right. So we get confirmation here of those moments. We get confirmation here that it was true. And he literally thumbed a piece of her skull into her brain and was like, okay, well, if I leave it here, she'll just have brain damage and she'll be drooling. Will Rogue still love her drooling? And it's this whole...
Do you think he would?
God damn, fuck him. Probably, yeah, Rogue's a softie.
I don't know about it.
Rogue would have cared for her.
Oh, yeah, I believe that.
And we finally in this moment see the gift that Darrow gave the Jackal back in Golden Sun instead of his box. A question that you asked in the moment that we've had so many conversations about. It's just kind of drifted from our memories. We finally figured it out. He got a scepter that represented him, the Jackal, with the pyramid of the society. Because Darrow was the sword and Jackal was the scepter.
Mm-hmm.
Reaffirming that relationship. Although at this point, it's far too late.
Yeah, it's a little late.
You're just a man who thinks a title will make him great, is a line that Darrow obviously spits back at the Jackal. And I think that there's actually a deeper truth there that Pierce is pointing to. People chase after that shit, the title, all the time instead of actually doing the work to establish themselves as good people, good persons. What I mean by that is that there are a number of people who are like, okay, I can achieve the title of director of sales if I do really well at my job in sales. There are those people who are like, I can do really well. There are the other folks who are like, okay, if I cut everyone else's ankles so they can't show up to sell things, I am the only option to take the title of director of sales. And you've got kind of like two competing groups, those who can actually achieve and those who steal or figure out the way to achieve beyond the people who actually do things. Does that make sense? This might be just a series of rambles.
No, that makes total sense. But I think that makes what I'm about to say even more muddy, in that sometimes being a great person is only possible when you have a great title, in that it increases reach and it increases sway, it increases power.
There is
having that title
power.
Allows you to be a greater person, if that's your prerogative.
I think it comes down to a question of how you earn it or how that title is gained.
I don't think it does. I don't think that matters at all. As long as the goal is the same and what you're using the position for is the same, ultimately, to the people being positively affected by the actions of you in that seat of power, it doesn't matter how you got that seat of power.
See, I think of it, I understand where you're coming from. I think of it as great man versus great title, right? Like Lorne was a great man who earned a great title. Nero was a great man who cheated his way in some ways to a great title. Adrius is definitely a bad man who cheated his way to a great title, but is able to wield that power after attaining that title. I guess the question is like what you can do within that title versus how you get there. Right. And I think I'm thinking about how you get there.
I think having a great title gives you much greater opportunities to gain the sort of title of great man as well, because you just have the reach. Whereas, I don't know, I could do a lot of great things, but they're there'd be very few people who would necessarily, historically, label me as a great person. You get what I'm saying? Like,
No, I do.
It's about scale.
I think there's a balance. And I think the important perspective that you're pulling into that is the power of the position, which is especially relevant, of course, to especially for underrepresented minorities who aren't able to even achieve the title and like achieve a point in the position where they can influence things downward in an effective way. That all feeds back. That makes sense.
Right. Absolutely.
I think thinking about this section, I agree more with Adrius than I agree with Mustang. As like Mustang steps into frame and defends Darrow from the perspective of he's earned trust, he's earned family, he's earned all these things. Adrius basically before that had said that you are a lone wolf, you are truly alone because of your pursuits, and that you were fucked. I think that it's a weird combination of the two. I think that Adrius and Darrow are mirrors. The difference is that Darrow has earned the love and respect of a handful of people, wherein Adrius has only earned the fear. That's what kind of separates them in these moments. But otherwise, I think they're very core similar. And it's these kind of things that have shaped their lives, their decisions.
And I think if you were to discuss this 3 or 4 chapters before the end of Golden Sun, they would be exact mirrors.
Yeah.
Because Darrow was living in fear of anybody knowing his truth. Yeah, so it seems like a fairly new development to this book that he actually has people that care about him genuinely. Whereas prior to this book, it's always been he is alone. And he can never tell anybody who he actually is. And he has to put on a face. Any of his friendships feel fake because they are friends with somebody who's not actually him.
Mm-hmm.
So in that respect, he and the Jackal are identical in the outcomes.
Pre-reveal, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
The final note of the chapter is Mustang condemning him, finally shedding that connection of the family between the two and the thing that she protected and valued first and foremost. It's based on a lot of that, the loss that she's experienced, of course, over the course of these books, but also things that happened before the books that she was exposed to. Yeah.
So the biggest thing being, God damn it, I asked you about this earlier.
Claudius is
the biggest thing she brings up. I mean, it feels good to finally have her condemn him out loud, but it feels late. I guess they haven't had that much of an opportunity to speak face to face, but it feels kind of late for her to go through with this condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. No, it definitely doesn't. It has a kind of tainted center feeling to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It adds it's good for her to come around to it, and she's had a difficult time distancing herself from family, and that's where it feels like the end of Golden Sun is, where she doesn't feel willing to accept Darrow on face value for what's going on because she loves her family first and foremost. Nero hasn't yet died, so some of that makes sense, but coming into this, I mean, it's, you know what, you're my only brother, you're a piece of shit, you've killed a bunch of people, you literally murdered Darrow's uncle on stream, like, no good, no bueno, goodbye.
Yeah, pretty much.
Chapter 57, Luna, is set in a very tense sort of scene. There are a couple of things here just to talk about of note. The war above Luna is set up to be this very dramatic moment. Darrow has planted misinformation to trick the Jackal so that there are a number of different fleets that are protecting Mars. Of course, we learn at the end that that's not true. But in theory here, when Darrow arrives, the Ash Lord is here with the Scepter Armada, and that's it. That's all that Darrow perceives. But
boy, is he wrong.
There's an entire envoy that gets sent to him that comes up and says, tell the hag, when they come up, he's like, no, I don't want to talk to you, you're little pawns. Tell the hag, we're here for war, not words. And I think that about sums up Darrow's feelings at this point.
Yeah. I do like the calling Octavia a hag is fitting but hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wonderful, to be honest. It fits perfectly.
And that threat would be such a cool mic drop moment if it weren't for the fact that this entire thing is a fucking setup.
Yeah, if it weren't for the fact that like this entire thing is about to blow back in his face.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is terrible. So we literally move from that moment where he's so ready. He's going to go let Cassius go, of course. He's giving him a Corvette out of the situation where he's not going to side with Octavia or the Rising. Give him a moment to be this individual who's free of these politics, the last of the real Eagles, as we've discussed previously. And, man, I believe the world still need Cassius Albulona. Is kind of the
fucking don't.
Says.
No, they don't.
Cassius, when let free in front of Antonia, betrays that trust of Darrow's Mustang and poor fucking Severo that all of them had placed in him. He steals Severo's gun and shoots him in the back, into the spine first, and then 7 additional times through the chest.
I mean, this is vindication for me. I had been so upset with Darrow the entire time that he was entertaining the idea of Cassius. But yeah, poor Severo. Poor fucking Severo. Why was his gun so accessible?
Well, I mean, it was so accessible because he wanted to, have it ready so he could defend himself in case something came up or happened, an emergency.
So he didn't have it in his fucking hand?
Well, he wasn't going to pull it during a non-emergency situation.
When would the emergency arise? Probably right when the cell doors are opened, right?
Maybe when Cassius pulled it out of his holster.
That is when the emergency arose. Good thing Severo had his gun.
It might have been too late. Huh.
Yeah.
That's
no, it is tragic, and it was completely avoidable, and I don't feel bad.
Wow, you don't feel bad about Severo dying?
I do feel bad about Severo dying, but I think it's Darrow's fault, not Cassius's. Which is what I called in the Deadpool, to be fair. So,
That's true. That's true. Okay. So
I'm bitter, Crossland. I'm bitter about this. If you can't tell.
You should be. You should be fucking bitter about Severo's death. I am bitter about Severo's death to this day. Yeah. It's such an unfair moment inside the book. It feels like it was telegraphed so well with the wedding and everything else. It's like, okay, you're building up emotional stakes for me, aren't you here, Pierce? You're like trying to confirm that it might not happen, huh? Huh? Is that what's happening? And then it fucking happens, and you're like, oh, god damn it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fuck. Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Chapter 58. We move in. Fading Light. Severo dies, according to Pierce Brown, literally without a quip, which is just so fucking sad for this character that's followed us since the beginning of winking off in the bushes.
8 fucking... It wasn't his pulse fist, right?
No, it was his gun. It was gun. Pulse fists are mounted.
Okay.
To your hand.
Well, 8 shots through the back. Tough to kind of speak through.
Right.
So, understandable there.
Man, it's unfortunate that he dies just in this moment. So we've got our post-mortem here for the character, of course. So what you think of Severo? These are just quick lightning round-ish thoughts.
I thought he was entirely genuine. Through almost every single interaction with him, he was true to himself, even when that meant being an outcast for the rest of society or being a fucking warlord for the most oppressed color below him. He was genuine, and he was caring for the people that he loved.
Okay. I think that's valid. I think that's a good read. What do you think of his long-term impact? What might that be? What might it look like?
That's where this gets kind of strange for me. I think his long-term impact is much more focused on Darrow and the Howlers and sort of their memories, but I don't think they even necessarily make choices based on Severo's legacy. I think he'll be remembered as a genuine, caring person. I don't think that most of the Reds or most of the Sons of Ares they'll take his death hard, but I don't think they'll necessarily take much from it, other than what Darrow can lead with going forward.
Yeah.
And that's kind of tough for me to wrestle with, in that, like, in my mind going forward, Severo's legacy is essentially just kind of a mournful memory of Severo himself.
God, that's tough. Yeah.
And I hope to be proven wrong, but I can't quite see how there's a tangible, lasting imprint on the cause outside of just memory.
What's your favorite moment of Severo?
Candy bar with Ragnar.
It's a great one. It's a good one.
Like just getting tossed down a hallway. It was jovial. The comeback was fierce, but joking, but not joking, but kind of just, they were playing with each other. They were brothers, and it felt like a very genuine show of who Severo was when the lights weren't on.
Fair. Final question. Any other thoughts on Severo?
It's your fault, Darrow.
Oh my god. Never let that go. Let that go, PJ. That hate should fester.
I mean, yeah, it should.
So post Severo, of course, dying.
Sorry.
Cassius quickly dispatches Mustang and Darrow without any sort of effort at all. He's just able to manage the two of them and frees Antonia, stealing away to make his escape with the group trapped within a box and the other two outside. He sends a communique with Aja that clears the airspace and grants an audience with the Sovereign. He makes a plea as well for Mustang, his former lover, to not be hurt, to which Aja and the Sovereign agree.
Yeah,
Apparently.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
Like, do you trust Aja or the Sovereign? Well, really, just Aja. Like, it's only coming from Aja's mouth.
Right. As it turns out as well, we find out that the Jackal was onto Darrow and sort of trapped for him anyway on the far side of the moon. He knew he was never coming to Mars. And Darrow effectively was dead in the water twice over.
So I'm curious as to how, if it's just strictly kind of thinking that, oh no, this seems like a trap or it seems like a bluff. That's a lot of trust to put in, like going to the wrong place intentionally. I think not necessarily that there's a mole super close to Darrow, but I think that his fleet is large enough and the crew on each of the ships is large enough that on a select few, maybe some tracking devices have been implemented after the fact. And the Jackal just kind of knows the movement of the fleet. Like, that doesn't seem outlandish. Even if they've been checked for tracking devices when they were initially brought into the fleet, who's to say there's not sort of an orange that's compromised working for the Jackal that's installing tracking beacons wherever.
I mean, of course. And that's the way that just fits in naturally. It's like, there's clearly something else here where that's been given away, either someone inside of the fleet, some other kind of microaggression, or just the Jackal being, the mirror of Darrow and figuring it out and understanding what he was going to do.
Yeah, I think that's plausible.
Any of those are plausible, I think.
Right.
As we deduce the solution.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see going forward
how the book ends.
No, how the Jackal knew. If it was just intuition or if it was actual information that he collected.
Fair. Our final chapter of the week is chapter 59, The Lion of Mars. We get a haunting picture of Lilith here right off the bat. And I say Lilith because there's Lilith, who exists in like demonic fiction, a number of other things. I say Lilith because it's the way it's spelt. We kind of questioned this beforehand, but if anyone has corrections in the way that we're saying things, please let us know. But it's interesting that she's being immediately compared as the Jackal's Severo. And I think that just gets back to sort of mirror reflection that exists between these two characters on the whole. They're just different sides of a similar coin throughout this entire story, both willing to resort to whatever it takes to achieve their own ends.
What I think it means is that she's going to get shot in the back 8 times by Cassius.
Because Cassius just does that to people.
Only to Severos.
We also, post that, of course, meet an interesting character, Tharsis, one of the brothers of Tactus, another Valial Wrath, who is another one of the Jackal's Bone Riders. I find that very interesting because he also communicates the permission that's given from the Sovereign for the Jackal to cut off Darrow's sword hand.
Yep.
Did you take anything else from Tharsis that you thought was interesting?
I mean,
it's brief.
I really didn't take a whole lot other than, God, I hate the naming of all these fucking Roman-based names. It's so hard to understand. Like, it's not hard to understand, but it's hard to keep everyone straight.
That's fair. Tharsis is interesting because I think he's interesting because I think he mirrors a lot of the same language that Tactus has, but obviously he's not the same person. Mm-hmm. As we heard him talk.
There was a lot of animosity between Tactus and his siblings, wasn't there?
Oh, a ton. Tactus was basically heavily abused by his siblings and was basically soloed out as like the weakling. He was the Julian, but he was treated like a weakling instead of the family, as opposed to Julian, who was beloved within the Bologna family. Yeah, very, very different worlds, even though they're both golds.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't talked about our fascination with language in this way in a long time, but the emphasis out of the short phrases on page 462 is just magnificent. Then I hear my enemy, the clicking of his black boots, the delicate shift in everyone's mannerisms, the fear as the jackal strides up. It's magnificent. It's that sort of short, punchy phrases that we've talked about being really effective before, right here.
I just love that Darrow can hear the color of his boots.
Shut the fuck up. You're fired.
No, I know. No, but those sort of staccato sentences are something that I've kind of missed from Pierce in the most of this book, honestly. It's been a little bit absent of that.
Pierce doesn't so much stand by the staccato sentence structure so much as Blake Crouch does.
Yes, that's right.
Pierce paints a very different picture, but I think good fiction can pull you in the direction that it wants to write, like a good author can. And I think here he's pulling this out as like a tool in his tool belt, where he can like emphasize this here because he's using it. And different people pull that out at different times. Blake Crouch uses it as his primary delivery. And so when you get something longer, you understand it's prosaic. It's meant to be big. And versus like Pierce is very big a lot of the time in his language. And when he's short and stark, it's communicating action. It's communicating immediacy, moments, feelings.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I was just... For those of you who don't know, Crossland and I recorded 2 books ourselves without publishing it. And both of them were by Blake Crouch. So
true. The entire tone of the last 2 chapters have obviously shifted into fucking grimdark. Everyone wearing the bones of the fallen Howlers around them. Jackal wearing Fitchner's fucking ribcage. It's just like
brutal.
How fucking vile can these characters really be?
Dude, it's pretty fucking metal though. Isn't that fucking cool?
Images onto the bones. Like, who are you?
I feel like we're at a Gwar show.
At least that's comedic.
Yeah, that's true. That's
like comedic value in a Gwar show.
Yeah.
If
you haven't seen Gwar live, please go do it. Even if you've never heard of them or heard their music or like their music, the shows are fantastic.
Yeah, right. It's actually better if you know nothing and you just go.
That's very true. My first Gwar show was like that. I think
precisely like that.
I think we saw Gwar instead of Weezer or something like that. It was something to that effect.
We also get to hear Jackal's kind of mirror speech, which is another example of obviously the mirroring that we've been talking about this whole time. You could literally like Mad Libs Jackal's speech and turn it into a Darrow speech by subbing out the nouns and pronouns and everything else. Like it's literally a fucking Mad Lib.
I want to do that now. We probably could. That'd be really interesting.
Practice.
That'd be really, really interesting.
Maybe we'll open up next episode with the
Mad Lib. We take a bunch of like monologues and take out the identifying words, make people guess who said it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good idea.
I don't know.
You can do that on Twitter.
Something like that. Could be fun.
Yeah, I'm in. And then finally, our section ends with Darrow's hand being claimed as a trophy of the jackals, severed by Cassius's blade, his blade hand. And a chant of Hic sunt leones, a response chant from the jackal to his 30 troops.
Yep. So I didn't quite see it as so much of a chant when I read it. I read it more almost ironic, like Hic sunt leones. Hic sunt leones. Like it doesn't seem that the jackal would be super interested in the tradition of that phrase. But to say it ironically in this scenario seems perfectly like him.
Yeah, it definitely does fit the kind of the character and the way that that's blended over time. I think it's interesting because obviously here there be lions, here there be dragons in the original context. It is something like there's something lurking there, and that's why you don't want to mess with it. And obviously the implication of lions with pride, it's fascinating where it's like, don't fuck with someone's pride. In that context. And he's also saying it kind of condemningly back to Darrow, where it's like, you can't fuck with ego. You can't beat pride. Ego and pride will always put you in your place. We'll put rightfulness, we'll put justice in its place.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
There are many interpretations there, but I agree with you. I think it's interesting. It might be a chance, it could not be. It's in italics, which leads me to believe that there's something special about it, but it's not strict in the way that it can be interpreted.
Yeah. I think the fact that it says Hic sunt leones, he says, instead of he yells or chants or something more powerful. I don't know.
Sure. Checks out.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like any of the Latin stuff is always italicized in this series.
Yeah. You're more often than not. You're right. Yeah.
Anyway.
So with that, we move into PJ's predictions. This week, it's worth noting that we've got some very weak things to talk about. The first one is, how much do you hate me right now?
To be perfectly honest, I think this was the right spot to stop. I think getting a week to sort of reflect on everything that's been happening in this section was needed. Like it was getting almost exhausting. So there's no hatred about where this stop was. I think if you would have stopped a section earlier, that might have been a little bit too much of a cliffhanger.
Fair.
Or a chapter earlier, not a section earlier. Yeah. Like if you stopped right after the death of Severo, that
sort of gave you time to linger on it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's important to move on to the fact that we finish the book next week. What are we looking at next week?
Oh, God.
What do you think we're seeing?
Oh, God. I think there's going to be a lot of carnage. There's going to be a lot of death. And I think it's going to be completely one-sided. I think, I think most of Darrow's fleet goes down. I think maybe they get a couple good shots off and kill some important people, but I think for the most part it's going to be a bloodbath, and the rain is going to be the Sons of Ares.
Sure. Okay. Who do you think wins?
In what way does Darrow win this? Like I can't, even knowing that he's the protagonist of this story and we're coming to a close, I see no way that he comes out ahead here. Even if he survives, which honestly I'm kind of tenuous about at this point.
Okay.
I don't think he wins. Was Darrow in the Deadpool?
Yep.
Okay. Did I say he lived or not?
You did say he lived.
Okay. Well, I'm prepared to be wrong about that one.
It was the very last question. Yeah.
Oh.
What questions do you want to see answered before the end of the story, if any?
When did the Jackal know? Or when did the Jackal suspect something of Darrow? Before he knew. I'd like to know when he first suspected something.
Sure.
But otherwise, I feel like things have been tied up pretty well as far as things that are overarching and mysterious. Pierce Brown doesn't seem to kind of leave things hanging like that, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, I definitely concur. Good call. Okay. All right. Reflecting on your Deadpool with 51 pages remaining. Do you have any changes? Anything you'd change?
I don't think Darrow lives.
Okay, Darrow dies.
Darrow dies. But
all right.
I will maintain my initial Deadpool as far as the punishments go.
Wait. So
I'm officially right now saying that Darrow is going to die.
But you're going to maintain the bet of your original.
But the
Deadpool
bet is based on my original
alive.
Deadpool.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to say before next week, the end of the trilogy?
I hope you guys got to take a little bit of a mental break like I did, because it's helpful. I'm still mad. I'm still upset. I think Darrow's a fucking idiot in this entire section. But, it's his bed. He gets to lie in it.
Reap what you sow.
Yeah, there you go. There's the thing. There's
Cassius even fucking said it.
Did he actually? Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
didn't
he did. Yeah.
That's,
man.
I mean, well, that's well said.
Well done, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, next week we'll be reading chapter 60 through the fucking end of the book. Finish it all. We're going to be talking about the wrap up of this book, kind of reflecting on it and discussing those things. The week following, we will be having, so post the next episode, in which we'll be discussing the end of the book, including the chapters therein. The week following, we'll be discussing the entirety of Morningstar with a close friend of mine, Kyle Lieberman, discussing a number of different things about the book, the series of first comers take to the series combined with PJ's. It'll be very fascinating to see the two of them go back and forth, talk about their different experiences with it. Mm-hmm. And then jumping beyond that, we're very excited for another guest episode that we have after that we'll talk about at that point. But for next week, we're just going to be reading through the end of the trilogy. So it's an exciting time. What a journey. What
a journey. God, I'm excited to read it, but God damn it.
God damn it. Am I right?
All right. So that is where we are leaving you for the week. Please, as always, continue to listen, refer to us to friends that you think might enjoy us, review us on whatever podcatchers that support it, if you feel so inclined. Our website is wordsandwhiskey.show, and our social media accounts are wordswhiskeypod, at wordswhiskeypod on both Instagram and Twitter. You can catch us there. Hope you all have a great week. Talk to you later.